My sister brought home a one-legged, blind man, but didn't have the patience to take care of him. She handed him over to me and went on a trip out of state. But 3 days after she left, the apocalypse broke out. Under my care, the man not only developed powerful abilities, but also began to treat me like a treasure. Fast forward, my sister ended up disfigured and maimed, while I lived a life of luxury. She envied everything I had. So much she brought a horde of mutated zombies upon us, wiping us out. Then I opened my eyes again, and there she was, shoving a packed suitcase into my hands, pushing me out the door. "Hey sis, it's your turn for a vacation this time. I'll take care of him." I left without hesitation. Without my space and my spring, I'd love to see how you're gonna become the leader's wife. When my sister showed up at the door with her suitcase, I was getting ready to change Thomas's bandages. Hearing the noise, Thomas turned his head toward the door and asked, "Is someone here?" Without waiting, my sister snatched the gauze from my hands, crouching in front of Thomas, cooing, "Thomas, my sister isn't good at this. Let me change your bandage." "But didn't you leave? Why are you back?" Though it was a question, a slight grin tugged at Thomas's lips. Watching her Russian suitcase in tow, I realized she had been reborn just like me. The last time, she left without a glance back, scared she'd be caught in some mess if she paused. I asked her, "What about the man you brought back?" She dismissively replied, "Isn't he your problem now? If you can't handle it, just toss him out." Now though, she tenderly laid her head on Thomas's knee, her voice laced with regret. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I acted impulsively. Can you forgive me?" When Thomas didn't reply, tears streamed down her face, leaving a small wet spot on his pants. I regretted it the moment I stepped out. I kept worrying how you'd manage without me. Who'd cook? Who'd change your bandage? What if my sister really tossed you out? The thought was too much. I couldn't stay away and came rushing back. "You're my responsibility. I brought you home. I'll see it through." Her speech plus her tears softened Thomas right up. He gently wiped her tears, coaxing her sweetly. "Oh, you silly thing. Always with the little tantrums." But she flashed me a smug look when he wasn't looking. I watched their charade silently until my sister finally remembered I was there. She pushed her suitcase into my hands, openly thrilled. "Oh, such a shame the tickets are non-refundable. Why don't you go on the trip for me, sis?" With that, she shoved me out and slammed the door. I looked at the suitcase inside. Thomas didn't get why she suddenly changed her mind, but I knew exactly why. Last time, my sister Lauren was hooked on online novels, fascinated by the cliché, where the ordinary heroine ends up with an impressive hero she once helped in his direst straits. When she stumbled upon Thomas, with his injuries but handsome face, she took him in without hesitation. But Lauren hated chores even as a kid, let alone nursing someone back to health. After a few days, she dumped the responsibility on me and went off traveling herself. Nobody expected the apocalypse to strike so suddenly. Lauren had picked a tourist hotspot, which turned into a death trap when everything went down. I thought she had long perished in the chaos, until I saw her again 2 years later. She was a mess, her hair matted, her face hidden behind a filthy scarf, eyes devoid of life. Seeing me, though, sparked a fierce, cold hatred in them. By then, Thomas was the leader of our base. He noticed her glare immediately, ordering his men to seize her and strip off her scarf. That's when I found out Lauren was alive, but worse for wear. One hand gone, her proud face destroyed. To cheer me up, Thomas found a healer to tend to her wounds, gave her food and shelter. She didn't even have to go out on dangerous missions like the others. But instead of being grateful, she blamed me for everything, claiming I stole her life. Thomas was my find. If you hadn't stolen my thunder, the comfy life as the leader's wife would be mine. For every accusation, I stayed silent, watching her with pity. Multiple times, Lauren went to Thomas, whining about her tough years, and reminding him she was the one who first took him in when he was on the brink of death. Thomas played along outwardly, but in private, he complained to me about Lauren's ingratitude. Everything she had now was thanks to me, he said, and looking at Lauren made him sick. When Lauren tried seducing Thomas again, he'd had enough and had her thrown out of the base. This time, as she was being dragged away, I caught her begging for help with her eyes. But I just looked away. Consumed by jealousy, Lauren lured an army of zombies with her flesh, including ones immune to powers. Our base fell under the zombie attack, taking me and Lauren with it. In this life, she's clinging to Thomas for dear life again. Caring for him's exhausting, sure, but there's no more fleeing, no never-ending hardship. We have enough supplies to last until Thomas awakens his powers. When he does, she'll get what she wanted, being the envied lady of the leader even in these times. Sis, it's my turn to be the pampered leader's wife. Reading her text, I played dumb and replied, "Huh? What are you talking about?" My sister brought back a man who's blind in one eye and has a limp, but she didn't have the patience to care for him. She left him with me and went on a trip out of state. 3 days after she left, the apocalypse hit suddenly. Under my care, the man not only awakened strong supernatural abilities, but also treated me like a treasure. When my sister and I met again, she was disfigured with a broken hand, and I was living in luxury. Jealous of what I had, she lured mutated zombies to wipe us out. Next time I opened my eyes, she was tucking a packed suitcase into my hand, pushing me out the door. "Sis, this time you go on the trip. I'll take care of him." I didn't hesitate to leave. Without my space and spiritual spring, let's see how you become the leader's wife. When my sister showed up at the door with her suitcase, I was just about to change Thomas's bandages. Hearing the noise, Thomas turned his head slightly toward the door and asked, "Is someone here?" My sister snatched the gauze from my hands and squatted in front of Thomas with a sweet voice, saying, "Thomas, my sister isn't good at these delicate tasks. Let me change your bandages. Didn't you leave? Why are you back?" His words seemed accusatory, but Thomas had a slight smile on his lips. When I saw my sister rushed and dragging her suitcase, I knew she had also been reborn. In our past life, she left without ever looking back, afraid something might cling on to her if she delayed. I asked, "What about the guy you brought back?" She carelessly replied, "Isn't there you? If not, just throw him out." But now, she lay her head gently on Thomas's knee, her tone filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, Thomas. I got impulsive and did something wrong. Can you forgive me?" Seeing Thomas remain silent, tears streamed down her cheeks, leaving a damp mark on his pants. The moment I left, I regretted it. I kept worrying about how you'd live without me. Who would cook for you? Who would change your bandages? What if my sister really threw you out? Thinking about all of that made me anxious, so I hurried back as soon as I could. "You're the one I brought back. I have to take full responsibility for you." Her words and tears melted Thomas's heart in an instant, and he reached out to wipe her tears, comforting her gently. "Oh, you with your little tantrums." But my sister gave me a triumphant look. I watched coldly, waiting for them to finish their act. It was only then my sister acknowledged my presence. She shoved the suitcase into my hands with undisguised excitement, saying, "It's a shame the theme park tickets can't be refunded. So why don't you go in my place?" With that, she pushed me out and slammed the door shut. I looked at the suitcase in my hands and sighed. Thomas didn't know why my sister suddenly changed her mind, but I knew exactly why. In my last life, my sister Lauren was obsessed with online stories. She always envied the ordinary female leads who rescue a down-and-out male lead and rise to success. So when she ran into Thomas by the roadside, with his bad leg and bad eye but handsome face, she brought him home right away. Growing up, she never even helped with the dishes. So how could she put up with the exhaustion of caring for an ill person? After just a few days, she dumped the responsibility on me and left on her trip. No one saw the apocalypse coming so fast. The tourist spot Lauren visited was overcrowded and became one of the most dangerous places when the disaster struck. I thought she'd been killed by zombies long ago, but 2 years into it, we crossed paths again. She was filthy, wrapped her face with a dirty scarf, her eyes lifeless, but brimming with hatred when she saw me. Our leader, Thomas, noticed and had her captured, pulling her scarf away. That's when I knew Lauren was still alive. But she was not doing well, losing a hand and her once prized face ruined. Thomas tried to please me by finding a healer for her, giving her food and shelter in our safe base, without having to go on missions like others. Yet she wasn't grateful and blamed all her misfortune on me, believing I stole her life. "Thomas was my find. If you hadn't taken credit, I'd be the pampered leader's wife now. I didn't retort, just looked at her with pity. Countless times she sought Thomas privately, crying about her suffering, claiming it was she who saved him at death's door. Thomas humored her but complained to me about her ungratefulness, saying her current state was all because of me, and her face now made him sick. After she tried seducing him repeatedly, Thomas had enough and had her thrown out. Finally, she looked to me for help, but I just looked away. Mad with jealousy, Lauren lured a horde of zombies, including mutant ones that ignored abilities, by offering herself as bait. The entire base fell to the zombie attack. Both Lauren and I perished. Back to this life, she clung to Thomas instantly. Caring for the sick is draining, but without fleeing and suffering, and with plenty of food until he awakens his powers, a life of comfort awaits. Grateful for her care, Thomas will cherish her, and she'll finally be the envied leader's wife. Sis, I'll be the pampered leader's wife this time. Looking at her message, I feigned ignorance and replied, what are you talking about? The jade bracelet on my wrist gave off a refreshing coolness in the summer. I laughed. I wondered how Thomas could go from being a nobody to a powerful ability user without the enchantment of the spring in the bracelet. My sister kicked me out, and I had nowhere to go. The apocalypse was 3 days away, so I had to find a place to stay fast. I rushed to the real estate agent at the corner of the neighborhood, asking her to find me a high-end place in the suburbs ASAP. The agent wasted no time and arranged a viewing for the afternoon. With a bit of time to spare, I went to the wholesale market and bought 3 months' worth of supplies. I stashed everything away in the hidden space inside the bracelet. It's pretty spacious in there. With the spring, I'm not worried about surviving. I don't need to take away others' chances of survival. I checked out a few houses and finally settled on one that seemed pretty ideal. I signed the lease and paid the landlord right there. The agent refused the double fee I offered her, insisting it was just part of her job. She looked young, had sweat dripping down her face, but still managed to hold an umbrella over me. Something tugged at my heart, and I fell silent. Lost in thought, I almost got hit by a speeding scooter, but the agent pulled me out of the way just in time. In that moment, flashes of images crossed my mind. A girl crying helplessly, a zombie with a gruesome gaping mouth, a blood-covered girl staggering towards someone terrified. I turned to the agent, opened my mouth, but words failed me. This is my ability. By touch, I can see the future. As we parted, I couldn't help but warn her, if you can, take a few days off and stay home. Stock up on food and water. With the experience from my past life, I vowed never to meddle in others' fates. But seeing such a vibrant life cut short felt unbearable. The agent blinked and asked, "Is there another virus going around?" Then shook her head. "Can't do. I'd lose my bonus, but I'll stock up on food, thanks." I offered to buy her a juice, and this time she accepted. While she was in the restroom, I added a few drops of spring water to her drink. Not enough to turn her into a superhero, but it'll boost her chance of awakening some powers. I hoped she'd make it through the rough awakening phase safely. That night, I moved into my new place, then slipped into the bracelet space. In my last life, Lauren took off after the apocalypse hit, leaving Thomas and me stuck. He was an oddball, his temper worsened by his abandonment and impairments. His tantrums often ended with glass shattering and cutting my arm, and that's when I accidentally discovered the spring's space. I poured some of the spring into Thomas's food, testing it on him. 3 days later, Thomas could see and stand despite his injuries. That's when I knew the spring was safe. I stood by the spring, eyeing the tiny meter-wide pool. If it's just me using it, it'd last forever. But in the chaos of an apocalypse, sometimes humans are scarier than zombies. If word got out about the spring, I'd be torn apart. Faces flashed through my mind, and I made a decision. Before I could act, I got a call from a relative. My phone showed it was my second aunt. After some hesitation, I picked up. Ever since my parents passed 3 years ago, these relatives had distanced themselves. Now contacting me must be Lauren's doing. "Sophia, has something happened to you?" "Second aunt, I'm fine." "Why?" She paused, then cursed. "That little brat Lauren lied to me. She said you were in a car accident in ICU and borrowed $5,000 from me. Out of concern for my brother's child, I sent it to her, but the more I thought about it, the less it made sense. So I called to check and found out she lied. I stayed silent, and she rambled on. I only gave her the money because of you. You better make her pay me back. I interrupted. Lauren and I aren't related anymore. Her issues aren't my concern. Oh, and with everything going on, stay home these days and stock up on food. Before she could add more, I hung up. Then a few more calls came in, all saying Lauren borrowed money. For those who'd been kind, I anonymously returned their money after hanging up. For those like my second aunt, my warning was the most I'd offer. In 2 days, the apocalypse would hit, systems would collapse, and money would become worthless. They might not even survive to get their money back from her. Lauren was planning well, sticking to her selfish nature. After our parents died, I installed cameras throughout the house, fearing for our safety as 2 young girls alone. I opened the surveillance app to check on Lauren, only to see 2 entangled bodies. Thomas, with his disabilities and blindness, was passive. Lauren was overly active, even thinking of me amid her gasps. Thomas, do you think sis knows how great we feel right now? He replied with a muffled grunt. Lauren looked at the camera, her eyes challenging. Sis, don't be jealous of me. I shut the feed, nauseous. Calming down, I switched to the living room camera. Supplies were stacked high, fortifying the place. She was at least smart enough to stock up. 3 after living through lockdowns, I got into the habit of stockpiling food. In my past life, after the apocalypse hit, my hoarded food barely got Thomas and me through 2 months. But I always kept my stockpiling under wraps. As for Lauren, Building 3 Unit 1806, did you buy all this stuff because there's news of another lockdown? I grinned as I noticed the message tagging me in the homeowners group chat. I didn't reply, and more homeowners started chiming in with questions. Lauren wasn't in the group chat, so she had no clue. I didn't plan on informing her either. After all, in the apocalypse, it's not the zombies that are the scariest, it's the depths of human nature. My dear sister, I hope you and your Thomas make it until his powers awaken. 2 days before the apocalypse, I bundled up and went to the outskirts where the armed police base was. Before they could see me as a threat, I said firmly, "Hello. I have important information to report." The officers on duty sized me up, saw that I was serious, and after exchanging glances, one stayed to watch me while the other went to report my arrival. Not long after, a female officer came out, inspected me politely for any suspicious items, and led me to the reception room. Once the door closed, she signaled for me to explain. I nodded, rolled up my sleeve, and revealed a jade bracelet. "Officer, what I'm about to say might sound like a fairy tale, but it's all true. In this jade bracelet, there's a different dimension with a spring that can boost physical strength. To prove it, I pulled a dagger from the bracelet. Ignoring the officers who grabbed their guns, I gritted my teeth and slashed my own arm. Blood poured out, bright against the clean floor. Then magically producing a stream of water, I applied it to my wound. The bleeding stopped, and the cut began to heal before their eyes. In just a few moments, only a faint pink scar remained, with the blood on the floor proving it wasn't a trick. The room fell silent, the shock turning into tension on their faces. They could tell this wasn't any ordinary item. I looked at the female officer and asked, "Would you like to come into the space with me?" Swallowing hard, she glanced at her superior, who nodded. She saluted me with determination. Yes. Seeing how she faced her fear to follow orders softened some of my tension. I reassured her, "Don't worry, it might feel a bit dizzy." With that, I took her hand and we entered the space. She stood there, wide-eyed and amazed, but remembered her duty. She stepped forward lightly on the grass, and her expression grew more complex when she realized it was real. When we returned to the reception room, all eyes turned to her. She nodded with difficulty, confirming my story. The superior's face was stern, silent. I continued, "After drinking the spring water, my body changed. When I touch people or objects, I can briefly see their future." I stepped closer, my nose tingling with emotion, tears nearly falling. I saw a future where death reigned, despair everywhere, and humanity clinging to survival amidst ruins, being harvested by countless monsters. Order collapsed. Demons hiding in darkness wreaked havoc. Survivors bowed to the dark, no longer seeing the dawn. You must believe me. Tears rolled down my face. I could have watched from the sidelines, kept my secrets hidden. As zombies roamed and chaos descended, I could have lived comfortably with the spring, even built a base like before and ruled. While humanity's darkness benefited me in a way, it offered countless methods for revenge against past foes. But I'd grown up on this land, comforted by its people's care and kindness. I love them. I love this land. I'm just Sophia, a regular person with a lucky break, but I have a conscience. These youthful and resolute faces in front of me. When the first wave of zombies hit, they had all died defending the public. Our country's military was the only one standing bravely before civilians, buying us a sliver of hope. Stumbling children, students debating celebrity sneakers, workers hustling for a living, seniors exercising in the morning. I can't bear it. In my last life, I regretted it countless times, yet was trapped and powerless. This life, I took off the jade bracelet and placed it on the leader's desk. The bracelet would be more useful in the nation's hands than mine. After a long pause, a calloused hand with gun marks returned the bracelet to me. We believe you. In a single day, I met several leaders, showing them the jade bracelet spring. Eventually, an elder known from TV approached and offered his hand. Ms. Sophia, on behalf of the nation, thank you for your selfless contribution. Now please help us extract the spring water for testing. I shook his hand seriously. My pleasure. Time was ticking. No one wasted any time as I began drawing the spring water. The elder sat by, watching as I vanished and reappeared with buckets, his eyes misty. I offered a small cup of spring water to the elder first. Sir, please. He hesitated, then smiled and shook his head. I'm already old. It should be used for its greatest good. The spring was not endless. To make the most of it, the extracted water would first be given to special forces of the army. Not insisting further, I kept ferrying water from the space. Once the spring was drained, I sank into a chair, pale and sweating. Using the space so intensely was wearing me out, even though my powers had awakened long ago. The female officer handed me a cup of hot water as I pulled out my phone. The emergency order was so sudden. The internet was filled with panic and speculation about the sudden lockdown order. There were even conspiracy theorists. For Inch's response to that statement, the official reply was just 4 words: trust the nation. After all, it's only my side of the story. Even though the nation chooses to believe, they can't just blatantly say the apocalypse is coming. So they're just going through with lockdown measures. That way, even if nothing's really happening, they can just say there's an unknown virus if asked. I thought it over and decided to open the forum. People were already speculating wildly. Maybe the apocalypse was here. But their posts soon got lost in a flood of new ones. I wrote an alert post. It explained in detail how to counter or escape from zombies, handle loved ones if they suddenly mutate, and listed essential supplies to have at home. I didn't expect it to cause much of a stir, but within half an hour, it shot to the top of the trending list. The bold red explosive tag really stood out. For a post like that to hit number 1, it was clear the government allowed it. I breathed a small sigh of relief. I hoped more people stuck at home would see it while bored. Whether they believed it or not, at least be aware. Just then Lauren called. I picked up. Hey sis, didn't you go to Province C? I smirked inwardly, but let my voice show a hint of hurt. You didn't change the ticket to my name. How could I go? She hesitated. Couldn't you just buy one yourself? But I didn't want to go in the first place. You kicked me out, I replied. Her tone turned cold. Sis, did you get Reborn too? I stayed silent, and she continued. You were the one who posted that online, right? Well, aren't you a world-class martyr? You're about to die yourself, yet you worry about others. In the past, it was only Thomas's powers that got you attention. You actually thought you were a savior. Let's see how you survive this time without Thomas. Watch me become the chief's wife. If possible, I might even see to your remains. I chuckled lightly. All right. I'll be expecting it. The timing of the outbreak was just like in my previous life. But this time, with everyone at home, infections were happening. But cities weren't falling every day like before. Cases were increasing, but still under control. Country A's government intervened early to keep things in check, but other countries weren't as lucky. In just 3 days, practically the whole world went under. Talks of doomsday spread online, with many despairing, saying that with the world collapsing, how long could Country A last? They'd rather die early than turn into ugly zombies. Some spoke without thinking, but people listened. Suicides happened everywhere. Then a candid video went viral. It showed soldiers, armed to the teeth, dropping into a zombie horde. As they landed, they were wrapped in flames. The person filming gasped, pulling viewers in. The flames on the soldier turned into fiery crows, diving into the zombies, burning them to ashes. When they were all gone, the soldier stepped out unharmed. The caption read, "Did humanity evolve without me knowing?" The video created a massive wave online, with over 1 million shares. People started posting their own snapshots. Look, apocalypse standard superhumans. Already got superhumans after just a few days? Did they know about the outbreak in advance? You whine now? Bet you'd behave if we sent you abroad. 2-day warning and lockdown saved us from a massive outbreak. Are you in denial or playing dumb? Notice the red star on the superhuman's chest. Must be our secret weapon. Do regular folks have a shot at getting powers? If I could control fire, I'd be one happy girl. Then the long silent official account posted a message. We've always been here. Panic turned into messages about self-help and making the best of things. But some with bad intentions began emerging. With the sudden lockdown, most households hadn't stocked up. Supplies were running low, and prices shot up way too high. Despite official bans on price gouging, many took risks to deal secretly. Messages in the Homeowners Association group kept pinging, mostly tagging me. 3RD Building 1806. Could you help out? It's tough times. 3RD Building 1806. We're neighbors. We're offering triple the price. I saw truckloads of supplies at yours. No way you can use it all. I live next door. It's just the 2 sisters there. 3RD Building 1806. Do you have any spare cold medicine? My kids got a fever, and all nearby stores are empty. How selfish. Profiting from a national crisis. I didn't reply, and the messages got angrier and more offensive. Some asked if we'd turned into zombies, but were quickly shot down by others saying there were sounds coming from my place. So definitely not. One irritated neighbor put me online. With many similar incidents lately, it was like striking a match in a dry field. Suddenly it spread everywhere. My privacy got exposed, with hateful messages flooding my inbox and phone. Malicious curses poured in. Even Lauren took the chance to gloat. Sis, you're famous now. Nationwide. Aren't you more glamorous than the chief's wife? I didn't answer Lauren's message. She wouldn't be laughing for long. 5 the neighbors were totally fed up. Someone in the group chat was like, I'm gonna go talk to her face to face. Then everything went quiet. Guess they were heading my way. I checked the surveillance. They were in my living room, sitting amid all the supplies, eating instant hot pot. Thomas was a bit nervous. What if they come after us for doing this? He asked. Lauren grinned, relax. They think it's my sister. Plus, there are zombies in the hallway. They wouldn't dare step out. Thomas, once you unlock your powers, we can build a base with all these supplies. Awesome. I'll be the leader and you, my leading lady. They laughed and playfully rolled around together. Their laughter was cut short as the security door rattled with loud bangs, accompanied by buzzes and voices from outside. Lauren frowned, peering through the spy hole. A dozen or so people were standing there, covered in zombie-smelling blood and flesh. They were risking getting bitten by zombies just to demand an explanation. Open up. If you don't, we'll find our way in. Lauren cursed under her breath. Thomas hadn't developed his powers yet, and the guy out front had a chainsaw. They could force their way in if they wanted. She wasn't dumb, so she opened the door after weighing her options. The visitors gaped at the stockpile in the living room and got angrier. You've got all this stuff and won't sell it to us? You just want us to die. Lauren lifted her chin defiantly, scoffing. Sell? What would you buy with? In this apocalypse, money's just numbers. It's useless. In this world now, supplies are worth more than lives. My Thomas is a powerful superhuman. If y'all follow us, you can use these supplies. Hearing superhuman, the neighbors took a step back, clearly wary. The guy leading the charge, however, remained calm and asked, If he truly has powers, we're willing to listen to you. But we need proof first. Lauren's smugness grew, gesturing towards Thomas. This here is Thomas, future leader of Time's Up base, an ice element powerhouse. The group looked at him, exchanging puzzled glances. You're saying this blind, crippled guy is a superhuman? Lauren and Thomas's faces fell. You'll never seek refuge in our base. Police. Like I give a damn. The guy pulled the cord on the chainsaw, silencing them. After exchanging a look, Lauren timidly handed over the supplies they wanted. They threw cash at her, spat on the ground and left. Now seemed like a good time, so I edited my message in the group chat. Sorry, I've been kicked out by my sister. The cops picked me up, keeping me alive. I apologize, but there's nothing I can do. I attached a photo taken at the police station, and its location. The group chat immediately blew up, all fingers pointing at Lauren. Someone from the angry mob recorded a video showing I wasn't there, backing up my claim. Lauren's wild comments like money is just numbers, supplies trump lives, and the future superhuman claim went viral overnight. Lauren fumed, teeth gritted, scrolling online. But she could only console herself. Once Thomas gets his powers, I'll show them all. Most superhumans were deployed to border checkpoints to stop zombies from crossing into the country. Neighborhoods gathered squads to clear out zombies in their midst. They couldn't hesitate, as shown by the dire examples abroad. The police bounced back from their initial shortage, nipping budding dark elements in the bud, rounding up opportunists. Every household got provisions delivered by community officials. 10 days went by in this organized chaos. As more people awakened powers, the internet filled with celebration. But in Lauren's house, tension grew thicker. Seeing folks develop powers made Lauren anxious. In her past life, she knew the first sign of unlocking powers was a high fever. At first, she asked Thomas constantly if he felt unwell, telling herself it was just a matter of time. With more people gaining powers, she grew impatient. Her patience with Thomas wavered, her facade of sweetness crumbling, revealing a volatile, vicious demeanor. She dragged Thomas to the bathroom, immersing him in an ice bath, trying to induce a fever by force. Thomas, already frail, naturally spiked a fever after this rough treatment. Lauren buzzed with excitement, caretaking meticulously while cursing, "Those who wronged me, your days are numbered." Thomas eventually awakened his power, but it left Lauren dumbfounded. Though he had ice powers, they were a fraction of a fraction as strong as in the past, barely chilling a can of soda. Lauren was devastated. She went berserk, yelling and screaming around the house, throwing tantrums like impossible and liar. Meanwhile, I was kicking back in my rented room, enjoying a cold beer from my stash, watching her powerless rage on camera. On screen, she shrieked wildly, losing it. Then she seemed to remember something, pulling out her phone with a crazed look. The next second my phone rang. Answering casually, I heard Lauren shriek through the line. "Sophia, it's you, right? You must have jinxed this. Why didn't the apocalypse spread like before? Why is Thomas's power so weak? What did you do? What are you hiding? You want to know?" I chuckled, toying with her. "I'm not telling you." She paused, then screeched even louder. A few more days passed, and I got a call from Lauren again, but this time it was a video call. In the video, she looked exhausted yet insanely relieved, with blood splattered across her gaunt cheeks. I didn't say anything, just quietly turned on my surveillance monitor. Lauren stared blankly at me and suddenly spoke up. "Sis, did I do something wrong? Why did I start over and still end up with a life I didn't want? What did I do wrong?" She covered her eyes in agony, tears carving through the blood, leaving deep grooves. I looked at the lifeless body of Thomas on the ground in the surveillance footage, and roughly understood what happened. Thomas's powers didn't live up to Lauren's expectations. Lauren's dream was shattered, and her mental state collapsed. She used every nasty word she could think of to insult Thomas, calling him worthless, calling him trash. Whenever she saw news about people with powers online, she'd beat and kick him. Thomas wasn't the kind to just take it lying down, especially after Lauren had been so accommodating, treating him like a powerful being. In his mind, he was the leader who could summon storms like in his past life. So how could he put up with this treatment? But his powers were weak. He spent days gathering just enough strength to form a sharp ice spike. So today, he tried to ambush and kill Lauren when she wasn't looking. But Lauren, having survived a real apocalypse, wasn't someone a powerless guy could defeat. She fought back and beat Thomas until he was a bloody pulp. In our past life, Thomas awakened his powers early thanks to the spiritual spring water and became quite strong. I asked him to go to the neighboring province to find my sister Lauren. He agreed but kept delaying it day after day. Although I had the spiritual spring bracelet, I had no self-defense abilities. Realizing he had no intention of helping me save my sister, I planned to set out alone. But he caught me and locked me up. He took my bracelet, only to find out it would only work for me. He forced himself on me, hoping to bind me with chastity. So, I became his captive. His ambitions grew, and he used his strong powers to become a ruler in the apocalypse, deceitfully setting up a survivor base. He forced me to give him spring water every day. When I refused, he'd kill innocent survivors in front of me. To keep up appearances, he acted like he cherished me in front of others, but I knew it was all fake. When Lauren found the base, I was shocked. Once I saw her disfigured face, I felt a bit relieved. At least like this, she wouldn't become Thomas's plaything. But she misunderstood, thinking I stole her rightful place. The day Thomas kicked her out of the base, I could have saved her. But I didn't. Because from the day she arrived, I saw the future. Mutated zombies broke into the base and killed everyone, leaving only the two of us to open our eyes in the past. I didn't stop Lauren, nor did I warn anyone. I let the zombies destroy the base. She made mistakes, but they brought light. I originally planned to throw Thomas out and let him fend for himself, enduring the apocalypse with her. But she tricked me into going to a scenic spot to die without hesitation. Fine, let it be. After I finished talking, Lauren laughed and cried, looking deranged. Why didn't you tell me? You didn't in the last life. And you didn't tell me after restarting. Were you laughing at me enjoying it? Do you hate to see me happy? I shook my head. No. It was you who couldn't stand to see me happy. If your envy last life wasn't so obvious, I would have told you everything. You abandoned Thomas, traveled out of province, seduced Thomas, attracted zombies, chose Thomas again this life, pushed me to my death. It was all your choice. I always just had to accept. She frantically pulled at her hair and bit her lip nervously. Impossible, impossible. You never matched up to me. I'm the main character, so why do you get the golden finger and not me? You must have stolen my fortune. You must have. I quietly watched her. Have you ever really seen me as someone? If you had noticed me, if you hadn't always relied on others, you wouldn't be in this situation. I'm really curious. Why do you keep coming after me? Wanting to end me? Lauren was stunned, then started laughing wildly. You could never beat me. So why do you live better than me? Why is that? I got to live again. I'm the novel's main female lead one more time. One more time. Next time, I'll definitely win against you. She laughed maniacally and plunged a knife into her neck. Blood gushed out instantly. She murmured, I must win, her bloodshot eyes wide open, and a smile still on her face. I looked at her expressionlessly and dialed 911. Hello. I need to report a suicide at Bayonne Community, Building 3, Apartment 1806. There won't be another chance. I only see flowers blooming among the ruins, humanity rising again. 6 months later, with me continuously providing spring water, 1 million soldiers awakened their powers. The government set up a special agency to manage the powered individuals. Helicopters dispersed diluted spiritual spring water over the skies of Country non-stop, and the number of sick humans dwindled. Occasionally, there'd be 1 or 2, but they'd be taken care of by independent powered individuals. The mutated zombies from the last life never appeared on Country A's soil. Only news from warriors helping in Country J and Country A brought back stories of how the outside had turned into a purgatory. Another 6 months later, a vaccine to prevent the zombie virus was developed. No longer would people worry about those around them suddenly turning into zombies. Gradually, life returned to normal. 7 the warriors went to different countries to search and rescue any survivors. Once they confirmed there were none, they'd pull out and let the fighter jets carpet bomb the place. Then, They'd hit it again with a round of incendiary bombs. Before the apocalypse, other countries had fresh air. Now it was nowhere to be found, just ruins as far as the eye could see. After this crisis, the global population shrank to less than a third of what it used to be. The world order changed dramatically, and Country A became the undisputed center of the world. In the 18th month after the apocalypse, it was a nationwide celebration. Everyone was glued to their TVs. An old man with white hair couldn't hide his joy amidst his solemn demeanor. He announced with gravity, "The darkest hour has passed. The dawn is starting to shine on every survivor. On behalf of all humankind, I solemnly declare, we have won." Cheers burst from the rooftops. This time, helicopters dropped flowers instead of chemicals. People poured into the streets on their own, hugging strangers they'd never met before. They shared the happiness of surviving against all odds. A few survivors of different backgrounds watched with envy from the sidelines. The cheering crowd took their hands, pulling them into a parade. Sturdy weeds sprouted up from the cracks in the pavement, blooming into beautiful flowers. What happened yesterday is behind us. We're all stepping into a new chapter. The future looks brighter than the past. The end.